Talking about horses, bringing you closer to some of the best horsemen in the world for tips, insights, and stories. Listen at home, at work, in the car, or in the saddle. This is Talking About Horses. Here's your host, Patrick King.
Okay, hey there gang, Patrick King here, and I want to thank you for tuning in for episode number 48 of Talking About Horses. Today I'm pleased to be joined by Linda Parelli. Since 1985, Linda Parelli's been honing her talent and skills with people and horses. She's a masterful teacher, an engaging and charismatic presenter, and an expert in equine behavioral psychology. In 1991, Linda co-founded the natural horsemanship movement with her husband, Pat Parelli, and her worldwide fame is built on her ability to inspire and empower others. For over 32 years, Linda has presented the concepts of Parelli natural horsemanship to audiences in their thousands and is in demand for her extraordinary master classes, clinics, and seminars. For the past 12 years, Linda's delved back into the sport of dressage and studied with the great Walter Zettel, Luis Lucio, and Christoph Hess with the goal of bridging the two worlds of horse psychology and gymnastic training. Linda's developed several powerful concepts with their basis in the Parelli program: horsenality and humanality, the game of contact, the finesse training sequence, the precision box, and produced several DVDs with international trainer and judge Christoph Hess, all available at Parelli.com. She also launched a personal growth program and community 5 years ago, PegasusPersonalGrowth.com and LindaLovesLife.com, plus developed an amazing, simple, and effective natural skincare line called Linda's Natural Skincare, LindaNaturalSkincare.com. Linda, thank you so much for joining me on Talking About Horses.
Thank you. No wonder I'm exhausted listening to that.
I was just thinking that. It's exhausting to read that. How did you even carve out time to come visit us on here with all of that going on?
Well, it's just priorities and eating an elephant, one bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
A great bite. So thank you for having me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I know we've got a lot of folks out there excited that you're joining me here, and I'm excited as well. This has been, I think we messaged maybe a year or so ago, and it's just taken us this long to actually get it together.
A little embarrassing, really. Life goes very fast sometimes.
I totally understand it. I totally understand. And, with that in mind, I guess the first question I want to ask is, now that life has slowed down so much with this whole COVID-19 thing, how are you faring? How has this changed your life and your schedule so far?
Well, first of all, what do you mean by slowed down?
I feel the same way, to be honest with you, completely.
Nothing has slowed down. In fact, it's pretty much ramped up, and we're very lucky to be stranded and sequestered, or what's the word that they're using? Sheltered.
Sheltered, yeah, there we go.
In Florida, and is fairly normal in terms of, I get up and I train my horses and I train my students, and then I work on Savvy Club and I teach, virtually, and I'm writing articles and we're doing business. It's almost a little bit of a relief that there's not also other things tacked on there, like, live tours and things like that.
Oh, okay.
So it's really, every cloud has a silver lining and many silver linings, and it's really made us focus on the whole virtual side of this. And, I think about how lucky we are. I mean, if this had been 30 years ago, people would just be kind of flopping around on their horses and not really have a way to keep accessing new information.
Mm-hmm.
So, no slowdown here.
Well, that's good. That's good. And like you said, the silver lining, it's probably giving you a little bit of a chance to maybe catch up on some of those things digitally that are easy to get lost.
The word is focus. That we always say, we have to focus more on this, we have to focus more on that, and now we have to.
Yeah.
So very positive for us.
Yeah, great, good. Good. So, wanna jump into it as we go here. I have a couple people messaging in, and I'm gonna apologize for this, saying that your audio is low, and I hope folks are recognizing that. I think that's on my end here. Folks are probably recognizing that I'm doing the whole redneck version of shining my phone onto the computer for this. To get this to go, because for some reason Zoom was giving me some tech challenges. So I just want to let everybody know who's tuning in that this is going to be available in its Zoom form with better audio once this is over, in case the audio is too low to hear over this. But I've got my speakers turned up all that they'll go, so hopefully that's going to help some. Since
I'll take it closer.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, just shout into the microphone, right?
Hear it now.
There we go. Good. This is like a bad Verizon commercial, right? Can you hear me now? So anyway, so let's dive into, we talk about how you're now bridging these two worlds of horse psychology and gymnastic training and bringing dressage and natural horsemanship together specifically. Let's, if we can take a step back. I know I've heard the story. I'm sure lots of folks have heard the story. But for those who haven't, what brought you to natural horsemanship to begin with? If I recall correctly, there was a horse named Siren that kind of had you at wit's end. Is that correct? Do I remember that right?
Actually, it was Regalo.
Regalo, okay.
Which means gift. And in the end, it was an incredible gift, because that's the reason I met Pat.
Okay.
And so Siren was my other horse at the time, and Siren made me feel like I was a good rider, because I could do a lot of things with him. He was an off-the-track thoroughbred.
Okay.
I could compete with him, and I could win with very low scores, I might add. But with Regalo, I could barely, get around an arena, and it was he was very, very challenging. Okay. And so I had all this advice, from people that ranged from, well, you've just got to be firmer with the horse and you got to smack him, and, to put him down. He's crazy and he's going to kill you. And being a girl, it's like, oh, but I love him. I don't, I can't do that and I won't do that. Mm-hmm. He was 7, by the way.
Oh my goodness.
And, oh, that's my dog. Sorry.
Hello there.
Yeah. So, I was in this place of like, I've got to find a solution, and, it's kismet. I walked into my local tack store and there was a video of Pat. This is 1989.
Okay.
And showing my age now. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And at first I didn't even realize there was no bridle on that horse. And so that's what got me to go to the clinic. And I thought, cowboy or not, because I was dressage and, we don't talk to cowboys.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And, but when you're desperate, you'll try anything. Stop his horse from a gallop with no bridle. Maybe he can teach me to stop at X from a trot,
Sure.
$300 worth of gadgets on my horse's head, bits and nosebands and every kind of martingale and market harbor you can imagine, So that's how it started. Come here. Sorry. I'm not known for dog training. Let me just say that.
Ah.
Right. We may have Lulu under control.
Oh, perfect. There we go.
Yeah, so that's how it started, and I went to that first clinic with Pat, and we started on the ground, and he started talking about horse psychology and how horses think and what's important to them, and that they're prey animals. And I was like, how could I have been in horses this long, 20 something years, and this is the first time I hear it? Mm-hmm. So, obviously it changed my life in more ways than one. And the sad part was that when I started to play the 7 games, they weren't called that in those days, but I went home and, I had a religious experience at the clinic, and I went home and started playing with my horse on the ground, and everything got better. I had to hide behind the bushes because everybody was criticizing me and saying, what's that got to do with dressage? And I didn't know how to answer that. It's like going to a piano lesson and you come home and they say, so what did you learn? You go, oh, I found middle C.
Right.
So it was far from impressive, but the difference in my horse was immediate. And so, you know, I didn't know what to do at the time except hide, because I underwent so much criticism for what I was doing, because it was so different. And of course, you know, my horses got better, I got better, and, you know, I moved to a different barn. And pretty soon I started helping Pat to change the world.
Yeah. Now that's awesome. And, you know, so we talk about how that changed your life. It changed your horses. A big part of that is it changed you, right?
Changed me.
Changed you, yeah.
You know, I have a saying, the horse is fine till we show up.
So
you know,
true.
So, yeah, so whatever's happening when we're in their presence, we're part of. And I did that with people. I was working in sales and marketing and education, and I was actually teaching this with people, but I didn't know how to extrapolate that to horses and horsemanship. And so, you know, I always say, well, if you know, when I talk about it, I go, oh my God, you know, it changed my life. And, you know, by lunchtime, I had a completely different horse. But if you interviewed my horse, he'd say, well, it took that cowboy a few hours, but finally he sorted that blonde out, you know?
Right. He fixed her. He finally fixed her.
Bring out the best in my horse instead of the worst, you know?
Right. So looking back on the years since you've been part of this whole deal and all the experiences you've had, what do you think you would claim as the biggest thing that has changed in you, or the biggest change you needed to go through for that?
For me personally, it was understanding horse psychology. Because as I mentioned, you know, just in what I was saying earlier, I was already doing a lot of these kinds of things with people.
Yes,
so,
right.
With people like Robert Kiyosaki, and I'd done a lot of, and Dr. Stephanie Burns, and I'd done a lot of NLP and sales seminars and, you know, communication psychology. And so I'm doing all this in my other life with people, and then I go to my horses and restrain them and you know, push them and make them try to behave. And I never even thought about, how do horses think? Where are they coming from? How can I communicate with them? You know, basically it was restraint and a series of kicks and pulls, for want of a better word. And that's going on. You know, not nobody, but a lot of people who are having trouble with horses, they're not communicating with them. They're doing what everybody's done for centuries, you know, bit on it, tie its head down, tie its mouth shut, make it your servant.
Right.
So that was huge for me, because I always wanted that, but I didn't know how to do it. And, you know, I never thought that I was a cruel person, but if you ask my horse, I was.
Sure.
I loved my horse, and I, you know, took care of him, and I petted on him, and I loved him. But then when, you know, he tried to run off, I put gadgets on his head and I hung on to him, and, you know, I never smacked him and punished him. That would have been the death of me. He was such a, you know, he was pretty extreme.
Yeah.
But, you know what I mean? And I mean, throughout our 30 years of doing this, I talk to a lot of people who are in that same boat. You know, we don't even know how we're coming across the horse. So learning that how horses think and how to use psychology was massive. And, you know, people, I often ask them, you know, so what's horse psychology? And everybody's going, oh, I was hoping you wouldn't ask me that, you know. We lay him on the couch and ask him about his mother, you know.
Right.
Means you get to the horse's mind, not just his body.
Right. And that's so huge. And I know from the time that I spent with Ray Hunt, you know, that was a big thing. He would talk about, specifically, he had this phrase, this way of saying that, you know, you move the feet to get to the mind, but sometimes you've got to move the mind to get to the feet. And very much that's the case with our horses across the board. You've got to be able to access that mind in order to be able to access the body, especially in the way that you're talking about, with competition, right?
Yeah. And, in the end, it's like when in Horseville, do as horses do.
Yeah.
We walk into the barn or the paddock like a human.
Exactly.
We have to think and act and feel like horses, because that's how you create rapport. Ray, I mean, obviously an incredible master. I asked him one time, I had to get him fairly drunk before he really opened up.
Uh-oh.
I was saying, why do you do this? Like, why are you doing this? Because he'd been doing it for so many years and, getting pretty cranky with people. It's like, why don't you get it? And I really wanted to try to get to his heart and go, why are you doing this? Why are you so driven? And the final thing he said was, because it makes me a better man. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, because horses, they don't care who you are. They're a great leveler. And
yes.
you care about how you make them feel, right? Can you make them feel safe? Can they find comfort? Can they play and communicate with you? And, who do we have to become in order to engender that from a horse, where the horse goes, hey, I like you, you get me.
Yeah, you get me. Yeah.
Right? So it's very much the perspective of, how can I get the horse to want to do this? Because everybody knows how to make a horse do it.
Right.
That's the dividing line. It's like, how do we cross that bridge where the horse goes, what do you want? Okay, how much, how high, right?
Yeah, right.
Enthusiastic about it, which goes beyond obedience.
Yeah, that's so true. And that reminds me of a saying that a friend of mine has, and I'll probably botch it, but I think of it all the time. He says, it doesn't, he's also a clinician, he travels the world teaching. He says, it doesn't matter what I think of your horsemanship. And it doesn't even really matter what you think of your horsemanship. What matters is how your horse feels about himself when he's with you, And that so rings true. It's like you said, they get me, this person gets who I am. And that's the, can I go farther? Can I go higher? Can I go, can I do more for you because of how they feel when they're with you? Yeah. Yeah.
When I reins, like to engage my horse, I don't want my horse going, oh no. I want my horse going, yeah. Do now that we're powerful together.
Right, absolutely. So with that in mind, what does it take to get that? What's the prerequisite to that?
Oh my God!
Just a simple question. We've got a few hours, right?
I mean, quite honestly, when I started doing dressage, it was because my horse was too crazy to event. I wanted to event.
Oh, okay.
The first cross-country course I did, I came back with my arms like stretched 3 feet longer. It was just my instructor at the time said, I know you want to jump and go cross-country, but you're going to die. And I could focus on dressage so that you can get more obedience and collaboration with your horse. Well, after 2 years, it was worse. But I went into dressage thinking, oh, this is boring and it's just for scared people. I kind of got interested when I got a bit scared.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And then I just went, oh my God, this is really hard. It's not just bouncing around trying to sit the trot. There's there's hundreds of years of thinking behind this, which is quite incredible.
Yeah.
And so, I went off on that little diversion with Pat and changing the world and, for 20 years. And then I was lucky enough to get back into dressage. I'd never left it mentally, but I had left it physically because I was so involved with what we were creating. But I was lucky then to have Walter Zettel as my mentor when I went back into dressage.
Okay.
Then, because I had been pretty burned by it, a lot of the things that I'd seen, and not that my instructor was really like this, but she didn't really know how to tell me what I needed to do. It was just, you have to kind of make the horse do it. But I'd been burned with, people getting pretty harsh on horses, and, dressage is like, we will make him do it, and tie his mouth shut and ties it. And so I must say I got a bit righteous about it for a while. It's like, hey, we've got to be better with our horses, but I didn't know how to relate that to dressage. And so when we connected with Walter, I remember sitting there and going, oh my God, we have the same philosophy, about being kind to horses. And, the way that we talk about it versus the way that Walter talked about it was a little bit different, verbally, but the sentiment was the same. And now how could we make sense with what we knew on the psychology side and what he knew on the gymnastic side? And our hearts were the thing that connected us, because, it was not at all about forcing horses. Wherever everybody else goes half halt and, get him on the bit, Walter's saying the opposite, give. I was incredibly lucky to come back into the world of dressage through Walter, because it made me really appreciate the root of what that's all about. And in every discipline, I don't care what it is, Western English, polo, natural horsemanship, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Sure.
In the end, it's what's in your heart and then what's in your head. If I think about way back when I was with Regalo, and what I wanted was in my heart, but I had nothing in my head to be able to achieve that. And, of course, that's what Pat gave me, to really see inside, horses' needs and how to do and, do for horses what they need us to do, instead of just that arrogant, well, this is what I want, and you're my dressage horse, and
right,
you got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard Charles de Cunfee say several times that, if a student doesn't understand the theory, they're not teachable as a student, right?
No.
And that's so much the same thing, coming from again, that different perspective, or that different, the words are different, right? The words are different, but the meaning is the same. The heart is the same. The intention very much is the same there. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Charles is a great friend. He's amazing. And, Pat met him many, many years before I even came into Pat's life. But Charles is one of those guys he's got it in his heart, and he's got so much knowledge. And what he says is incredible. In fact, way before I even met Pat, let alone Charles, I was watching videos of him with his student Elizabeth Ball. Like, oh, one day, maybe I can do that. Yeah. Awesome. So we talk about the idea that, the similarity, right? The heart's the same, the words might be different. And I find at the top of the game, it's all the same, right? And at the bottom of the game, when you're talking about a really solid foundation, it's all the same. And what you find in the middle is egos and BS a lot of times, right? Yeah, it gets mixed up, it gets messed up. So what would you say, how do you look differently once you went back into dressage? What's the big difference that you're looking at now, coming to that world where the words might be different but the heart is the same? How did you view that? How do you view that differently now?
I think the first thing that it gave me was an ability to sort, because it's kind of funny if I think back, like to the 1986 and 87 when I was struggling with my horse Regalo. I looked like a dressage rider.
Okay.
I had the outfit, I had the matching wraps and saddle pad on my horse, I had the flash nose band, I had the draw reins, I had the, so it's like, oh, well, this is what everybody does, that's dressage, that's what you see all around you in that middle of the stratas that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And, so you feel like, well, I'm doing the sport and this is part of it. But until I learned the truth about it, from Walter in the beginning, well, Pat actually in the beginning going, artificial aids are great excuses for bad hands and not enough knowledge. It's like, oh my God, there's me. I see a lot of people trapped there. And where, quite honestly, in the beginning, I judged them for it. It's like, what's wrong with you? We're trying to show you something different. And, they couldn't even see the correlation between natural horsemanship and dressage because it just looked like a different discipline.
Right.
I came to, it's kind of age and experience and a little bit of wisdom to go, well, I remember being there myself and being righteous. So for sure, number one, I'm a lot more compassionate, for people who are kind of stuck there. And even ones that go, well, I saw that, but I don't care. I'm going to do this because that's what I'm going to do. I don't have the same feelings of judgment as I used to, 20 something years ago. And then the other thing I have is, action talks and BS walks. So I thought, I'm not going to get out there and talk about dressage until I can be a good example of what I'm preaching, and I don't just want to be a good example to my horse, but, I always have Walter sitting on the rafters, going to, would Walter approve of this? And he passed me on to Christoph Hess, and, Lucio is another of, our dear friends, where it's very leveling at a high level.
Yes.
You can be a legend in your own backyard, a legend in your lunchbox, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be a legend in dressage, but I'm trying to bridge these two things and be a good example, and do it so that my horse is happy and my mentors, give the nod. It's like, yeah, you're doing the right thing. And if you do that, then it stands out to people. You don't have to go and beat your drum. It's just like, well, there it is. You walk the talk. You're not just talking the talk.
Right. So this brings me to a question that is kind of off topic for what we were talking about. We had said we wanted to talk about, the horse psychology and how that applies to performance, but talking about kind of that beginner, right? Or talking about these stratospheres, these levels of learners of development, how very beginning, it's very much the same. At the highest levels, it's very much the same. In the middle, the widest middle, right? The grandest piece is where so many of the struggles live. When we talk about that in dressage, I read years ago a statistic from the U.S. Dressage Federation, and it said that something like 80% of the horses competing in the USDF shows were at first level and below. And of those 20%, about 80% of those were at second level. So that talks about this kind of invisible ceiling in the development of the horse and the rider, right? And in the development of students I know in natural horsemanship and like in the Parelli program, I've heard you guys refer to like the level 1 jail, right? And you see that it doesn't matter what program it is, right? You see that in every program. And maybe that's just people, that's our development. But what do you think is the difference? What makes the difference between those students of anything that go from the struggling with the basics and actually being capable of going farther?
I think it's ambition, quite frankly.
Okay.
I mean, I'm very ambitious. I don't want to compete. I'm doing dressage for my own education and my own personal growth. I was at the top of my game in natural horsemanship, and I needed the next, where am I going? And so for me to do dressage, I'm not going, well, I want to do first or second level. It's like Grand Prix. Sure. That's where I'm going. And I want to learn how to do that and how to train my horse. Not an easy path, but for me, the research and development part of that is really important, because then I can pull so much back into what I teach in the program, and I've just got a greater understanding. But I think, quite frankly, it's ambition. We talk about 4 pillars: talent, skills, try, and luck. Right?
Okay.
So where's if out of those 4 things they added up to 100, each one is worth 25. Okay. What's your skill in each of those? How talented are you? How much try do you have, which is ambition? ambition, right? No, sorry, talent, skills, try, luck. How much talent do you have? How good are your skills? How hard do you try? And then how lucky are you to meet the right people, get the right horse, and find as, when preparation meets opportunity. You don't lie around on your couch and get lucky.
Right.
You're doing in how you approach the world and open yourself to opportunity, and that you're prepared to accept is what is part of that. So to me, it's all of those things. So, I have a certain amount of talent, but I don't have the talent that, say, some of the most incredible people I know through our program have, like Wally Gegenschatz and Mikey Bonson Reed and Hansa, people like that. It's like, oh my God, the talent they have is incredible. Just athletic talent and bravery and stuff that, you're born with. So if you don't have as much talent as somebody like that, you really have to work on your skills.
Yeah.
And I've very hard on my skills. I have a modicum of talent, but I have greater skills than I do have talent. And a lot of very talented people, it comes to them so easy, they don't really work on their skills. So they're like, I don't need to learn that. They're a little bit flippant about it. Then if you go into try, that's your ambition and your fortitude. And, I have a very high level of try. So if you gave me scores, I'd say 20. On skills, I'm in natural horsemanship pretty high. I'd say that, I'm a 23, 24. In dressage, my skills are about a 15.
Okay.
Maybe I'm being a bit hard on myself, but still, that's where I'm really building those skills. Then my try out of 25 is like 100.
Ah, yeah.
I try very hard. I dedicate myself in every way to whatever I do that I'm interested in. That's, what I did when I was working in the skincare industry, and then being Pat's partner. I try harder than anybody I know in working on my skills with natural horsemanship. I try as hard as I possibly can, and the same thing with dressage. And you want to give up. There's things get really hard, and every now and then I'll hit that new level of incompetence in the dressage, and I go, oh, this is so hard. And I go, why am I doing dressage? And it's like, oh, it's because I love it. I remember. And I have to pull myself back to that because it's too easy to give up. Fly is, I would say, one of my best suits. And then, to me, all those things create opportunity, and I'm prepared to meet those. And so my relationship with Pat and what we've done to change the world has helped us to meet some incredible, incredible people. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, fantastic. So talent, skill, try, and luck. So if you were to max out 3 of those and get a 75% score in dressage, you'd be doing damn well, right? So, so let's say you would max 3 of those out. Which is the one you'd throw away?
Throw away?
Yeah, if you could max 3 of them out, but one of them you just completely failed at and you got a 0 on it, which one would you be? And of course, it's just a random off the cuff question, but which one would you? Talent, really?
Yes, because I've seen some people that had very little talent, like for riding horses, that have really applied themselves in learning the skills, tried harder than anybody I know, even me, and created their opportunities. And many of them are Parelli professionals today. That they went, well, I came because I can't ride and I'm in all kinds of trouble. And then they just dove in and did all of those things and turned it into a career. So I'd say talent is the one you could do without.
Interesting. Okay.
But I don't think any of the other 3 you could do without.
Yeah.
Good question.
Oh, that's just kind of, off the cuff thinking about it. You got it started with the scoring them all, at the 25 there. Yeah. Cool. That's awesome. So Then when we're talking now about all of these things, right? Talent, skill, try, luck. We're talking about the psychology. We're talking about dressage. We're talking about bringing this all together. How do we bring it together? You know, we talk about right, again, an easy question maybe, but not an easy answer, right? Yeah. How do we go about saying, okay, here's the psychology piece of this, and here's how we apply it to the gymnastic side of that? When we think about a lot of the horses that we see going around that are struggling psychologically, right? Struggling with their emotions, with internal tension, things like that. How do we bring that together? How do we bridge that?
Well, I think about it as mental, emotional, and physical.
Okay.
So is knowledge, and we're talking about the horse now.
Okay.
Mental is knowledge. Does the horse know what we're trying to get them to do? Because a lot of horses don't.
Sure.
Right. And when they don't really know and they're confused, now it has emotional consequences. Right? So I always talk about how confusion is an emotion. And people are like, really? And I said, yeah, just think about it this way. People never go, I'm confused. Right? They go, I'm so confused.
Right.
So that negative emotion then puts you into fear or argument. And the exact same thing happens with horses. When they're confused, they're either going to go to flight or fight.
Okay.
Right? So more of a nervous right brain type of horse that we call them, then they're going to go into flight mode. If it's a horse that's more left brain and like, you think you're the boss, well, cop this, you know, then they're going to fight you. And then you get the really difficult ones, which are, they do both. It's fight and flight. That's that's Jekyll and Hyde. It's very difficult. So the mental misunderstanding very quickly leads to the emotional reaction.
Sure.
You have to be able to balance those. Can I get my horse to understand the goal of what I'm doing, to understand what it is I really want? And that's like with the game of contact. When I finally figured out what contact was, thanks to Walter's patience, I went, well, number one, I had no idea. Number two, my horse had no idea. So now I know, can I teach my horse the goal of contact?
Okay.
Because horses, you know, we pick up the contact and the horse goes, thanks, that's uncomfortable, now what? Right? Or it's used more for control and physical, you know, manipulation rather than, hey, it's the embrace of the dance. It's the dancer's embrace. When you dance with somebody, you know, it's easier for a woman to understand this, but you need a man to scoop you into his arms and hold you, and then you can, you know, harmonize. And if it's flimsy or it's uncertain, the woman has no chance. And so I finally understood how contact is that between horse and rider, because it connects you. But how do you explain that to the horse?
Sure. Right.
Understanding, he's like, well, I still don't get it, right? So explain it to the horse mentally. So then on the emotional side of things, you know, horses can very quickly get emotional because, you know, they're scared, they're confused, or they need to dominate you. So how can you change those emotional pieces and get it fairly level? Of course, you know, that's pie in the sky because, you know, it's always going to go up and down, especially when you're learning and progressing. You know, anything that's new is challenging. It's difficult.
Sure.
I mean, even as humans, learning is hard, and it's a very emotional experience. And most of us are scarred by teachers who had no idea there was an emotional component to it. Just when we were having trouble, they told us we were stupid. They pushed us harder. They, you know, in the old days, smacked you. So, you know, it's like, I just don't know. And then you're getting pressured, and same thing happens to horses. So we have to understand how to help horses not go there. And if they do go there, to make that important instead of, I'm just going to wrestle you through this emotion. I don't, you're emotional. You're going to do this half pass. You're going to do, right? So having that ability to go, okay, I'm going to put the horse's feelings of safety and emotional confidence before the movement.
Because really you're talking about their confidence as a learner and a performer at that point, right?
Exactly. And then you can do all that and do all the wrong things gymnastically, and you're going to create mental and emotional problems because the horse is hollow in his back, he's short in his neck, he's tight in the jaw, he can't move his body properly, and now it's like all the good work that you did in the first two is ruined, and vice versa. So to me, you know, I mean, the last piece of the puzzle for me was that physical gymnastic part.
Okay.
And fascinating. And, you know, I give each one of those three pillars equal weight. It's like I'm not going to do gymnastics and then upset my horse because of the way I did it. I'm not going to try to keep my horse so happy that I don't teach him how to use his body.
Sure. Yeah, there's no getting a full score in either of those things and abandoning any of them. That's got to come together.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's a juggling act. There's three balls that you've got to keep in the air, you know, or even those spinning plates, you know, how, you know, those old guys that would, I guess they weren't old, I shouldn't say that, but you know, you have the spinning plates on those little sticks.
The sticks, the spindles, yeah.
All spinning, and then it's like, oh, that one stopped, I got to do that, now I got to do that, now I got to do that. You know, that's what it is, and that's what makes it hard. And, you know, earlier you talked about something that made me think about ambition. You know, if you're going to do everything at kind of a casual level, it's not that hard. The higher your goals, definitely the harder it is. There's more plates that you have to keep spinning, and the quality of the spinning becomes critical.
Right. I heard a comment the other day. I was listening to a podcast somewhere or something, and the comment was made: a standard education results in a standard performance. Right, and that makes sense. The higher level you want to be performing at, the higher level that education has to be. And as we're talking here, in all fronts, right?
It's careful what you wish for.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not going to do anything that I don't want to be excellent at. So I'm going to be very careful about what I pick because I know how much I have to immerse myself in it. And that, you know, there's a lot of people that are not that ambitious. Sometimes I joke with my, you know, apprentices and protege. It's like, yeah, maybe we should just go back to trail riding.
Right.
Like the more you know, the more.
Yeah.
In some ways, and you've got to be up for the challenge.
Exactly. I had a student years ago tell me, you know, before I understood any of this stuff, I didn't have all these problems. Yep, ignorance is bliss, right? You know, kind of.
Right.
Yeah, goodness. So you talked about the goal of contact, and I think, you know, coming from a dressage perspective, this goal of contact is super important. And we could delve into this with every different discipline, right? But, you know, we'll go with the idea of dressage primarily. So what would you say is that real goal of contact? You gave the analogy of the dancers and that, you know, kind of being able to be swept off your feet, that sort of thing. But when it comes to riding our horse, what is the goal of our contact?
Well, I'm going to talk from the horse's point of view.
Okay, perfect.
And I put it in a little story.
Okay.
So my horse Remo, who's really more famous than I am, a Dutch warm blood, and his mother was a appendix, thoroughbred quarter horse.
Okay.
So half Dutch and half appendix. And so I always blamed his mother for his little dinky trot. Like a quarter horse. You look like a warm blood, but you trot like a quarter horse.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, that's basically, I thought, well, I've just got a horse with not that much talent. But when you train them, you know, up through the gymnastic process and all of that, in dressage, then of course, you know, they start to move differently. It's like people learning deportment, or you learn how to dance, you know. 1 minute you're clunking across the floor and the next minute you're floating across the floor. Well, you have to learn that. Not everybody's that talented. And my horse certainly wasn't talented. So I'm riding with Walter, and Walter's always about give, you know. And I had, I could do a lot of things with Remo, But whenever I picked up the reins, he would kind of come behind the vertical a little bit and be really light in my hand. And I'm thinking, oh, it's really good. It's so light, you know.
Mm.
But he would keep this little dinky trot. He never moved through his body. And so after years of riding with Walter, one day, Rema took the contact. And I thought it was wrong. I went, oh, this, like, he feels kind of strong or heavy. And Walter would usually guide me, you know, very quickly into transitions, you know, walk and trot and canter and trot and walk. It was always transition. And that would motivate Rema. If you did anything for too much time, like try to get your circle right, well, he just like, you know, you know, what's so great about this circle? I don't want to do it anymore. And so Walter's just got me on this circle and then riding, you know, like down the long side. And I'm like, where are all these transitions? Rema's going to die in the bum. Anyway, so, sorry, that was Australian. So I rode past Walter and I said, Rema feels really heavy. And I still remember Walter. He was wearing a hat like yours. And he looks at me and he just watches me ride past and says nothing. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll just keep riding.
Right. When the German instructor says nothing, you know you're doing okay.
Not this time. And Walter had told me at one point, you know, some stories about students that had gotten mean with their horses and he just quit teaching, right? So I'm trying not to panic.
Yeah.
He says, and so I'm riding around and he still got me doing all these big patterns, you know, and no transitions, and Rema's getting stronger in my hand. And so I stopped in front of Walter and I said, Walter, Rema's so heavy, I don't know what to do. And Walter said nothing. And now I'm thinking, oh my God, I've upset him. And so I ride on again. And about a minute later, he says, okay, that's enough for today. And I thought, okay, I've upset Walter.
You've been fired. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really worried. And so, you know, he was staying at our house and I cooked dinner and we sat down at the table and I'm in chaos because you know, he quit teaching me and I didn't understand what was going on. And I would video all of my lessons. And after dinner, we would sit down and watch the lesson. So Walter said to me at dinner, he said, my dear, what was the problem? And I just burst into tears like, I don't know. Walter was Rema was so heavy and it was just horrible. And he said, well, let's watch the video afterwards and then we can talk about it. So we sit down and the video starts and I'm like, right, I'm going to see it that, you know, Rema's mouth's going to be open and he's going to be on the forehand and it's going to look terrible. He was the best he'd ever looked. He was round, because normally I'd watch my videos and I'd hate it. I'd be upset and go, oh, you know, I'm never going to get this. And Rema looked amazing. And I said to Walter, Rema looks amazing. And he goes, I know. What were you so upset about? I'm like, oh, I don't get it. Anyway, he told me what you were feeling was contact and you'd never had it until that day. So Walter went home and the next day I thought, all right, now that I know what it feels like, how can I teach my horse? This is the goal. Because normally we pick up the reins and no matter how soft and careful we try to be, the horse is like, I don't get why I should hold hands with you by the bit. And so I figured out a way to teach my horse. And then he got it and he just transformed. I mean, it was like ballroom dancing. All of a sudden, he would step into the contact. We would feel connected. I mean, this was just the beginning of, you know, the next part of my journey. But I finally understood how to teach a horse. This is the goal. The contact is the goal. I'm not just shortening the reins on you and then pushing you into it. Right?
So he became Fred Astaire in that moment. Yeah.
Actually, the other way, you know, that he became my Ginger Rogers because I'm the leader.
Yeah.
So it was, I mean, it was an enormous breakthrough for me. And I remember, you know, because every horse I could get my hands on, it's like I was experimenting, and then I was experimenting with students and, you know, testing my theories, and it just kept working. And so that's when I then came out with Game of Contact, and I thought, my work here is done. I have bridged these two worlds. Well, it was just the opening of the next chasm.
Right.
All these other things that can come before it and with it. And as my studies grew and my understanding grew, I created more educational products around it, like the finesse training sequence, which actually gives you a way to get up to that game of contact, and then the precision box, which, you know, anyway, it just, you know, it created my next 10 years of work, basically.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All from that one moment where you thought you were an utter failure.
Absolutely.
So you talk about you talk about the feeling of heaviness, and that was the moment you found out what contact was. Would you still describe that as heaviness, or how would you talk about that? How would you call that different for people listening who are thinking, oh, well, my horse is really heavy in my hands, so I must have proper contact? What's the difference in there?
First of all, the lightness that I thought I was pursuing is not a feeling in your hands.
Okay.
It's a feeling of responsiveness. Right. So today I was doing canter walk transitions, 5 strides of canter, 5 strides of walk, 5 strides of canter, 5 strides of walk. Now, lightness of response is critical in that moment, because it can be 7 strides, it has to be 5. So is the horse ready? Is he light, you know, and responsive and ready? When a horse is heavy, they're not ready. Right? They're just going, just trot. Then they get kind of on the forehand. They start to lean on the bit. Then you get people going, get off my hands. And the heaviness is created by the way that you're training the horse, that you're not riding enough transitions or laterals and balancing it, right? It just gets boring, and, you know, and the horse starts to lean on you.
Right,
so
right.
Interpret heavy. I didn't have another word for it on that day with Walter, because I thought, ooh, this lightness in my hand is nirvana. That's where I'm going. But for, you know, 3 years, I watched my horse on video with me going, I don't like it. Yeah. He's short in the neck. He's not through. He's got a dinky trot, which I was blaming his mother for, you know. But it was really just lack of contact. He was actually, you know, quite ready. That was his lightness. But my hand and connecting it all into that package of, you know, that's why I call it the dancer's embrace. You cannot do ballroom dancing without, you know, I've been invited to be on Dancing with the Stars in not the big show, but Pagosa Springs.
Okay.
It has the stars thing. And so, you know, I've been training myself in dance, and it's the same thing. There's got to be this lightness and readiness, agility, but you have to have contact with your partner, because if you don't have it, there's no relation. It's like you can't do push-ups without a floor.
Sure. Right.
Yeah. Back on you, and it's not pulling you either. So it's, I mean, contact is, I remember Luis Lucio, who, you know, he's a 2-time Olympian from the Spanish team, and he was the chef d'equipe, and then he was on the FEI dressage committee for 5 years as the trainer's delegate. And Luis, we got to know Luis in 2000, and so he's been doing the Parelli program for, I mean, basically 20 years, and he's incredible. He really gets it. And I remember him saying to me, Linda, we dressage trainers, we can do flying changes and we can do piaffe and passage, but we cannot sleep about contact. Like, contact is the hardest thing, A, to teach a horse, and B, to teach a human to teach a horse. Anyway, so, you know, that whole thing of contact is, you know, it's a philosophy and it's a feeling, and that mental, emotional, and physical element, it's all three. Because if you have proper contact, you have proper biomechanics. If you don't have proper contact, you don't have good biomechanics, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the lightness that you had felt prior, that you learned wasn't that proper contact, is that absence of contact, right? And so then, like you said, the videos that you were watching, you were unhappy with how your horse looked, even though you might have been happy with how he felt, right? Rather than that. So, I talk a lot about how a soft feel, we've all heard that term, soft feel. And I refer to it, when I talk about it, I talk about the soft feel has to start in the hind feet and come to the bridle instead of coming kind of behind the bridle, like what you were talking about. Otherwise, it's basically a form of psychological roll cure where the horse is hiding right behind the hand, and then you end up with that poor movement, that sort of thing. How do we educate those horses that have learned to hide behind the hand, have learned to hide behind the bridle to give that softness or that lightness that's artificial? How do we teach them then to come into this contact and not be heavy and be confident with it? And how can we teach them, hey, guess what? That stuff that we told you before, well, I might have been lying or I might have just not understood, but here's this other thing.
Right. Oh, very easy, right? Here we go. So, for most horses, the bit feels like a barrier and a trap. So when you pick up the reins, the horse goes, oh, my comfort is when I come away from the bit.
Okay.
And I get pressure. So actually have to change the horse's opinion of pressure from the bit. And it's not that we put the pressure on, it's that the horse puts the pressure on.
Okay.
So, for example, in our program, we teach horses to lead backwards by the tail. But we also teach them to pull us up a hill by the tail.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Do that, right? You've got to be able to teach the horse the goal. And then in natural horsemanship, what we've really, and I mean, Ray, master horseman, I mean, they get it, right? We just popularized it and made it easier for people to understand. We didn't do anything new. Everything is about pressure and release, right? Comfort and discomfort. So when the horse is doing the right thing, we learn to release. When the horse is doing the wrong thing, we learn to keep the pressure on, whatever that means. I mean, it can be light pressure, but it's still pressure. When they do the right thing, that pressure has to go away. So I have a saying that I developed as I was, figuring out the game of contact, is that if you're not taking the contact, I will.
Okay.
So if the horse drops behind, I'll follow him.
Okay.
When he goes, I got to find release, and he goes forward, I give.
Yes.
And in the beginning, it's give completely, but then it becomes give in stages until pretty soon the horse goes, I'm taking it. And they step to the bit, through their back, which that's a whole other discussion.
Right.
And that's why I went, I know how to teach a horse to take the contact. Yes, if a horse is afraid, it opens his mouth, hangs his tongue, all of that kind of stuff, I can fix it through the game of contact because I teach the horse the appropriate response to pressure. Right? And contact should feel like a release, not a trap. It's the horse's idea to take it. Now, it's not contact and you're done.
Sure.
I mean, it's like, I'll take it back to the ballroom dancer. It's like, we got contact. Now what?
Yeah.
Okay. So now you have to do all the exercises. You have to do transitions. You have to supplement. I mean, scale of training comes into that. You got rhythm, relaxation, contact. Now what? Impulsion, straightness, collection. Those are the exercises you do with contact. Contact is not the end. It's a means to an end. Wasn't that easy?
That was easy. That was so easy, man. We're all going to be perfect with it.
Oh my God. Like, who do you have to be, first of all, to be able to teach the horse to do that? And then to ride in such a way that you're not blocking the horse in his back, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where it starts to get very interesting.
Right. Now, when you get that feeling, oh, I'm sorry, it bugged out there for a second.
You have to remind yourself why you love dressage. It's so hard, but I'm passionate about it. Yeah.
Right. So when we get this feeling that they're coming to that contact, is there a point within that, and maybe this is the readiness that you're talking about, is there the point in that where it feels light again within that?
It feels like a what?
It feels light again within that.
The lightness is the responsiveness.
Okay.
And, if you think about it through the stages of dressage development in a horse, when you go from, that long and low to, bringing the weight back and compressing the frame and all that kind of thing, mm-hmm. The contact in the earlier stages is stronger than in the later stages. Mm-hmm. And the way that I think about collection is 50% forward and 50% up.
Okay.
And in the earlier stages, you have probably 90% forward, 80% forward, 70% forward, 60% forward, and the up, begins to develop. But in the end, with that collection, it's 50-50.
Okay.
Right? And then, if you go to Piaffe, or like to Passage, then Piaffe, your up becomes more than your forward.
Sure. Okay.
There has to be that readiness to go forward. So in the end, there's still almost that 50-50 feeling of up and forward. It's just like moving it through time and space. How much do I want?
Gotcha. So you're living on that continuum.
Yeah. And it's dynamic. I mean, it's not like I've got contact, let's go. It's like now if my horse feels a little heavy, which means on the forehand and not ready to do anything else, then I'm going to do more transitions. If he's losing suspension, then I'm going to use more laterals. Right? So now it's the brain of the trainer to go, how do I keep those plates spinning and don't allow my horse to get heavy? I mean, I experience it all the time. Sure. Yesterday, my horse was getting heavy, and I'm going like, what? Why was that happening? I knew what to do to fix it, but what do I have to do to prevent it? That's the real art. How do I set it up so my horse never even goes there? It keeps me up at night, and keeps my passion going, because when he goes there, I've failed him at some level, right?
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. We got a question that just popped in that I think is really interesting. The question is, then, does the concept of self-carriage strictly come from the horse's mental understanding of what's being asked?
I think it's all three. It's his mental understanding, it's his emotional calmness, and then his gymnastic capacity. Because okay. I've seen, what people say as a horse in self-carriage, but he's completely hollow through his back and short in the neck, but he's not leaning on the reins, right? You can give the reins and the horse stays like that. And so people go, ooh, he's in self-carriage. To me, it's like self-carriage means the horse is not relying on me to carry him.
Sure.
It's like, again, the dancing analogy that, in dirty dancing, they talk about the space, right? You've got to own space, but then you've got to be together with it. But that doesn't happen on day one.
Right.
That's where you're going. There's going to be times where, I have to depend on my horse a little bit more, or my horse has to depend on me a little bit more. The weaker the horse is in the abdominals, the heavier he's going to be on the contact. But he needs that because, when you first do push-ups, if you do it on a springy floor, you use all the wrong muscles before you learn how to use your core. Right. And so there's a great art and science in all of that. And I think if we get righteous about any of those things, we're going to go down the wrong path. I was righteous about lightness as a feeling in my hands. Mm-hmm. And my horse was light, but biomechanically and gymnastically, he was not right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. So, masters have spent hundreds of years trying to explain this, and you can explain the theory, but the feeling has to come together. We're all great armchair experts, but when it comes to actually doing it,
yeah,
it's and you learn all the time. It's like, oh, I thought this was how you ride a half pass. No, that's how you ride a half pass. Like, no.
Right. The layers of the onion start to get peeled back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's the horse does have to understand it, but then he has to be able to gymnastically do it, and he can't do that if the rider's not skilled.
Right.
We have to develop ourselves as equestrian athletes according to the level we want to ride. I cannot sit like a trail rider when I want my horse to engage and be powerful. And I can't, sit like an empowered rider and expect my horse to relax on the trail.
Yeah.
So, it's what's the dance you want to do, and you have to do it. I think about, I'm doing this in my body, and I invite the horse to do it in his body. But if I'm not doing it, if I ride with a hollow back and I'm looking down and I'm collapsed in my neck and my weight's on the forehand, guess what my horse is going to look like?
Mm-hmm. Sure, because you're his point of reference.
Yes. I can't expect him, Pat used to say it, you can't expect your horse to be Ginger Rogers if you dance like Freddie Flintstone.
There you go. Yeah, true enough.
I ride like, anyway. So it's this like, wow. It's an amazing configuration and conflagration of a lot of elements coming together. And dressage is hard. It's an art.
Yeah.
We can all be mechanics at it. But, when you want to be an artist, it's a whole other journey.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. Let's see. Okay, I've got actually a couple other questions that have come in. I really feel like we've nailed it right here with this idea of bringing the psychology to our performance, right? And you talked about the mental, the emotional, the physical side of it. And I feel like that's so huge because we have so much of the time. We have the physical side of, if we're saying dressage, right? Again, we could be talking about any discipline, but we talk about the physical side of it. And that, you can have that. You can have the emotional side of it, right? You can have the mental side of it. But if you don't have it all together, you can have the physical side of it and your horse could be a nervous wreck, right?
Absolutely.
You could have a horse emotionally relaxed and athletically useless, right? He's a frump on the couch, right? So you've got to have all of those together.
All those spinning plates.
Yeah. That's such a great analogy. I really love that. All those spinning plates. That's perfect. So a couple questions came in here earlier, ahead of time, before we went live. And Amalia asks, she says, "Hi, Linda. I'm interested to know how much time you would spend in each savvy. How much time do you spend online at Liberty, riding freestyle, riding with finesse on your own personal horses?"
It varies according to their level of development. Mm-hmm. So if I take Jazz, who's my main squeeze, and he's the horse that we're doing the Grand Prix journey together with. We're broaching Prix St. George now. I would say that in the beginning, I did basically, 1 minute of finesse, and everything else was online, a lot of freestyle to just get his confidence. He's a very emotional and introverted horse. And so most of what I did was all around getting his confidence. And now I would say that it's probably 50% is working on my dressage and 50% is spread between those other savvies.
Okay.
So I always warm my horse up. Sometimes it's 2 minutes on the ground and he's ready. Other times I'll develop his liberty a little bit because I still want a well-rounded horse. But Pat said it in a very, he teaches it this way. He says you want 80-20. 80% of what you do should be relaxing and unwinding the spring, loosening the spring. And 20% is tightening the spring.
Okay.
And a lot of the time we have it the opposite way because we're ambitious and we want to train the horse to do this. And so we spend 80% of it of like tightening up the spring and winding our horses up, and only 20% of letting them relax. And horses actually need the opposite. And so it varies. Like I might spend 4 consecutive days where I'm developing something and peaking my horse on the 4th day, and it's been pretty intense. And on the 5th day, I'll go for a trail ride.
Sure.
And I don't even, pick him up and ask him to do anything. It's just, hey, we're chilling. And so instead of going, I'm going to do 80-20 every day, because I had this conversation with Pat, at one stage I said, I'm feeling a little bit guilty because I'm overdoing my finesse and I'm overdoing my dressage training. And Pat said, no. He said, you're going to do that because you're at that stage now with what you're teaching your horse. And I said, but I'm not doing the 80-20 thing. And he said, 80-20 is not every day. 80-20 is over your horse's entire development.
It's the collective. Yeah.
And that was like, boom, I get it. And now what that freed me up to do was not be so regimented about what I do when. It was more about what I do why. Does my horse need more relaxation? I'm going to do more of those relaxing things. Ride without contact, play online. Or my horse needs more tightening and energizing and sharpness. So now I'm going to put a little bit more onto that liberty side of things or the finesse side of things in dressage training. So once you understand what is relaxing and what's energizing, now you can give your horse what he needs when. And to me, that's the art of it.
Perfect. That's awesome. A question a little different coming in from Mary Jo. Mary Jo says, hi, Linda. What's your answer to a horse that kicks up and makes faces when first asked to canter? I know it's important not to reward the wrong answer, but I don't think that arguing is the answer either. This is a young mare with about 90 days under saddle. Physical issues have been ruled out. I love that she put that part in there.
Yeah, that's very good because you want to make sure that there's nothing going on. So I always think about there's 3 reasons a horse does something. Fear, dominance, confusion. We already ruled out pain, right? Fear, dominance, confusion. So you have to go, okay, and we have a concept called horsenality, which, a lot of natural horsemanship people are familiar with. So if it's more of a right brain horse, it's probably a fear thing. If it's more of a left brain horse, it's probably a dominance thing. Don't tell me to canter, why should I canter, right? Or it's confusion that the horse doesn't really understand that that's what you've asked them. So, I find, and I used to do this, of course, years ago, that going from trot to canter, you would just kind of drive the horse until he cantered.
Yeah.
There was not really this thing of like, and now we're cantering. So the horse mentally doesn't understand it. Now, in the beginning, and you said you've started lots and lots of colts. In the beginning, you do trot them and trot them and trot them like Colleen Kelly, has her scale of like, it's a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and, at a certain point of energy, the horse will naturally want to go into the canter. We do the same thing with colts. It's very basic. Just how do I get you to feel like cantering, right?
Exactly.
And then soon you transfer that to, I'm going to teach you that when I do this, it means canter. So I would think with that young horse that he doesn't really understand that's what you want. And when they're confused, they will default to dominance, which is, you and who else? I don't want to do it, so therefore I'm going to buck or kick up. And if it's right brain, they're going to run off and go, oh my God, I'm scared. So that's the first thing, is to go, which of those things is it? Because then it will help you address it properly. With a young horse, and even older horses that tend to kick up or buck going into the canter, you don't have enough energy in the trot
Mm.
to make the canter transition easy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think about it this way. Do I have a canterable trot?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time, people have a nice relaxed trot and they say canter, and the horse goes, what?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't ready, mentally, emotionally, or physically.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get that energy up and go, from this trot, a canter would be easy,
Mm-hmm.
then that's going to be one of the defining pieces. If it's too slow, a lot of horses will kick up just to get the energy to go into the canter.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And you're maybe not necessarily even talking specifically about speed there when you're talking about energy, right?
Right, because, like today, I was cantering down the center line because I'd been watching some Grand Prix in Rotterdam last night, and I got all inspired by Dorothy Schneider. She's an incredible rider. Her horse is amazing. And I counted her strides as she entered at A and halted at X. And it was 17 canter strides.
Okay.
That's what I did. I was like, I bet I have 10.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I have 8. As it turned out, I had 12.
Ah, okay.
Then I went back and I went, I need to get 17 strides from
Mm-hmm.
A to X.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can do little mincy nothings,
Right.
but you want that expression that now out of that canter, I could do a flying change, I could do a pirouette, I could do
Mm-hmm.
a whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so the energy of that canter within the shorter strides was what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exactly right what you're saying. It's the energy of the canter within the trot. It doesn't necessarily mean speed. But in the beginning it does. With young horses
Mm-hmm.
it does.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
You can't collect them to have the energy without that speed. But
Mm-hmm.
that's eventually where it comes to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Hope that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. So that's fantastic. And really, I mean, if we want to take it to another extreme of that, that's what jigginess is, right? They've got the energy of a trot, and we want them to walk, right? So they're going to be jigging down the trail. So that's Mary Jo's problem in reverse, right?
Yes, it is. And then it's nervous energy, right? It's not physical gymnastic energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, whoa, fizzy.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, fizzy, exactly. Yeah.
Relaxation in there.
Yeah. Krista comes in with a question. What tips can you give humans to help the horse emotionally? Yeah, another easy question with a not so easy answer, right?
When we teach natural horsemanship, we're not teaching horse training as much as we are teaching leadership and communication
Mm-hmm.
and self-management. And so, I think about who do we have to become to be able to bring that out in a horse. I want to bring out the best. So sometimes, I'll be talking with students and, they're very ambitious and they get very self-critical and hard on themselves. And the emotional energy of that is very negative.
Sure.
And the horse cannot tell. I can't tell. The horse cannot tell if you're mad at yourself or you're mad at him.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels very threatening. So we really have to learn how to manage ourselves mentally, emotionally, and physically. We talk about mental fitness, emotional fitness, and physical fitness. And this doesn't come from just, waving a little magic wand. It's personal development.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I remember years ago when I started helping Pat to form a program out of what he was doing to teach others, because my talent was more in teaching. I remember I was assisting him at a clinic and this woman started crying and I knew she was having an emotional breakthrough. And I went over to Pat and I said, I just need you to know that, this lady's crying over there. And Pat goes, why is she crying? This is just horsemanship. It's like, like we have these revelations of like, oh my God, I didn't know I was thinking like that. I didn't realize that that's how I was coming across to the horse. I didn't realize that my enthusiasm was being experienced by the horse as a threat. I was just excited, and my horse is like, oh my God, my predator's gone crazy.
Yeah.
And so you get all this feedback, and you start to appreciate what the horse is trying to tell you, but then you have to learn how to change that. And so, when a horse is emotionally out of sorts, it triggers us very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
We get frustrated, or we get tense, or we get, a little too firm or direct line, or it even makes us scared. And we don't realize how that's affecting our horse. So it's kind of like, if a person was going crazy, who do you have to be to help that person get back, on earth?
Back on track, yeah.
We have language skills. I mean, we're supposed to understand each other as humans.
Right.
Now, how do you do that with a horse? And so there's a certain amount of evolution that you need as a horseman to be able to do that, and that's obviously what we teach. And then the other is that you need a certain basis with your horse. You need to have a language with your horse. You need to have a relationship at a point where he goes, oh, I trust you. You're not a predator.
Mm-hmm.
And so all those are preliminary to being able to pull that magic, moment and go, oh, I can calm a horse. You can see a Ray Hunt do it. Boom, it's done. Pat Parelli, I've watched it 1,000 times, thousands of times, all over the world. They bring in this horse that's like climbing the walls and crazy, and it's killed 5 people last week. And they give the lead rope to Pat, and the horse goes, and Pat didn't even do anything.
Yeah.
There's energy that, we have to learn. And I love that question. And I really want to kind of phrase it in a way of like, who do I have to become that I could do that with an animal? Whispering is a wonderful mystical term, but what it is being able to connect so deeply with that horse so quickly that they go, I don't know why, but when I'm with you, I feel calm.
Yep.
It's a process, and we have to learn that. There's no one magic technique or bullet. It's a relationship, and it's what you're able to teach a horse and what you're able to convey very accurately through your mental and emotional and physical actions.
So it goes back to those spinning plates, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And the personal development program, Become a Horseman, is a personal development program. It's not a series of techniques. Like we've got it all very well defined to level 4, all 4 status in what we teach. But after that, level 5, 6, 7, 8, let alone 10, which I think you just spontaneously combust and you leave the planet. He hit 10 and he was gone. Ray hit 10, he's gone,
That's it.
There's in that 5, 6, we have thousands of people around the world who have graduated level 4 officially or unofficially in our program, and then they're going, what are my tasks for level 5? It's not tasks anymore. Now it's scope and depth. Now it's the 10 qualities of a horseman. It has way more to do with your heart and desire and your, respect, impulsion, flexion, your field timing, balance, your savvy, your experience. It's your principles. It's your philosophy. That's where the growth comes. How you touch a horse, how you pick up the reins, how you use your body, how you use your energy. That's a whole new level of mastery.
So it's not so much what you're doing, it's who you are with what you're doing.
Yeah, it's, how do you convey that? I mean, I'm going through that journey myself. I'm level 6 working on level 7, and the tasks are not it. It's your feel and timing and balance and savvy and experience, and that's what it starts to be all about. It's not what you do. Like I often, when I'm teaching, I say, we owe it to our horses to be good riders. And people are like, And I said, so what is a good rider? And people go, oh, well, you can You can ride all of the gaits, and you can canter and gallop and jump, and you can do flying changes, and you can do spins, slide stops, passage, piaffe. And I said, well, what do you think a horse thinks is a good rider? That's who we have to impress.
Yeah, that's a whole different answer. Yeah.
They don't care how good you are at piaffe or flying changes or slide stops. It's how you relate to the horse, how you touch him, how you guide him, how you teach him, how you help him in those darkest moments, how you know, how good can you get him to feel about himself? You know, my horse Jazz was a right brain introvert, is a right brain introvert that was just like, I would rather just stand still and pretend the world doesn't exist. How do I take that and get him to want to be a tiger in Grand Prix, to want to be powerful? You know, that's the journey.
Yeah. Awesome. Very cool. Well, I'm loving this conversation, and I feel like we could probably talk forever, but I want to be respectful of your time. You mentioned, before we went live, you mentioned something about a free ebook. You want to tell us about that?
Yes. We wrote this book called 7 Secrets of Success with Horses. And basically it relates to our 7 games. And the 7 games is the root of the Parelli program, because it's the language of horses. It teaches you how to speak to a horse through body language. And the first 3 games are your ABCs on how to manage pressure and how to get a horse to understand what all these things mean physically or you know, without touching the horse. And then after that, it's a series of patterns that actually are the root of everything that you want to ever be able to teach a horse. And so you learn the 7 games in level 1, and through level 2, 3, and 4, you expand them from on the ground to riding, to liberty, to riding with contact, with no contact. And so it gives you this way to communicate with your horse, which not only solves all the problems we were talking about, you know, concerning miscommunication and misunderstanding. So immediately you improve confidence and reduce emotions in a horse and in a human. And it also gives you the way to teach, to actually solve problems that are understandable, like horses that are hard to shoe or afraid of the vet or won't get in a trailer, that you learn how to teach a horse that these things are safe. They're not actually threatening to them. So in the 7 Secrets, it's really looking at, you know, what are the problems and what's the root, and then how it relates to the 7 games. So that's what the ebook's all about.
Cool, fantastic. Now, where can folks get that? Where do they find that?
I sent you a URL.
Ah, yes.
I don't know if you can put that up somewhere. But it's Parelli.com/natural.
Okay, Parelli.com/natural. I'll make sure that I tag that. Yeah.
Hold it at the screen. Parelli.com/natural, and it will take you to a landing page, and that's where you sign up for the ebook, and you can get immediate access to it.
Perfect. That's fantastic. Great. Let's see. Couple wrap-up questions on here. These are always, I always think these are fun. What would you say is one actionable tip or thought for riders that they can ponder or work on today?
Give. The more you give, the more you get. And it's very difficult, you know, for us as humans, because when things get tough, we want to get tougher. We want to take, we want to hold, we want to pull, we want to control. And if we can learn more to give in those moments, it will actually help horses a lot more. Now, that's easier said than done.
Sure.
But I would say that's my number one thing. Give.
Fantastic. I love it. What's a recent book that you've read or video that you've watched?
In general?
Yeah, in general.
Well, video-wise, I mean, I watch good Grand Prix riders. I'm not actually watching any educational videos on that because I'm a very dedicated student, and I'm very careful not to get too many points of input because it can become very confusing.
Okay, kind of muddled.
Yeah, I try to look at the picture that I want, and I only watch that. You know, I don't fill my head with lots of other pictures. If there's something that I don't want, then I don't prolong it. I'll look at it, learn something from it, and then I get off it. I keep looking at the images that I want to emulate.
Okay.
So I very clear in my head. And then I'm very loyal to my instructors. You know, I studied with Walter for, I think it was almost 12 years. I mean, obviously Pat, you know, he's my natural horseman guru, and, you know, all about psychology and all things on the inside of the horse. Walter passed me on to Christoph Hess. And so I'm studying with him. And we made some DVDs together, like the Scale of Training, and that was right, you know, early in my education with him. Okay. But I'm, in fact, having a lesson with him tomorrow virtually. But, you know, they're the ways that I study if I'm really thinking about my horsemanship and my dressage. Apart from that, I'm always studying things on the human psychology side, and I wouldn't say that I'm into any one book at the moment, but I study online, you know, just keep filling my cup.
Perfect. Good. Here's one. I love answers to this one. What is something that the horse has given to you?
Oh my God, something. Life. Life. You know, horses were my passion and my hobby. I never ever dreamed they would be my life. So thank you, horses.
Right. Yes. Perfect. So we've said it several times in this chat, but this is a constant journey of discovery and improvement. What area of your horsemanship or personal self-development are you working on or wanting to improve?
All of the dressage is like my goals to ride to Grand Prix in dressage. I mean, that's my map. Every day I wake up and I know where I'm going and what I'm doing. And you know, it's mental, emotional, and physical. Every step of the way, I have to learn more about my body and how to use it. I studied Pilates with Janice Dulac. Pilates for Dressage. She's incredible. So I have to learn how to do things in my body that I want my horse to do. But I would say the gymnastic side of it is my big learning curve now, because I've spent so many years, I mean, basically 30 years on the mental, emotional, and behavioral side of horses. And I learn about that every day, especially as it's connected now to performance training. That keeps expanding, but I would say my steepest learning curve is on the gymnastic side. You know, I see that you interviewed Gerrit Huysman. I mean, his work is amazing, you know, but all that biomechanics stuff that we need to understand, you cannot ride at high levels, even lower levels with a healthy horse, unless you know about those things.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I'll be speaking with Gerrit again here in a couple days.
Yes. So it's expanded me enormously, you know, on that side of things in my studies about saddles and biomechanics and how horses move and how the rider has to sit to facilitate that.
Yes. Lots of things, right? Just that. It's just that easy. Perfect. Okay. If you had a giant billboard advertisement for the whole world to see, what would be the message you would put on that?
Oh gosh, I'd have to steal my husband's line. Keep it natural.
There you go.
Natural is terribly misunderstood. You know, I always make this joke. You know, people think natural means that you're against bits and you don't use shoes and you don't shave your armpits. That's right. But natural means, you know, understanding nature, what's natural for the horse, what's natural in the horse-human relationship. How can we make it more natural? How can we use the laws of nature to teach our horse instead of mechanics and, you know, just obedience and making horses do things? So when I say keep it natural, there's a huge drop-down menu underneath that about what that really means. And it's enriched for me every single day. You know, it makes me stop blaming horses and stop blaming people, to understand the nature of why things are happening. You know, even with this virus thing going on, what's happening in nature there? You know, something we don't know yet. So keep it natural. That's the billboard.
Perfect. I love it. Let's see. So how can folks find you? If folks want to find out more about you and your program, what you're up to after they listen to this interview, how can they find you?
Thank you very much. Parelli.com is the website. There's lots of places to go after that. Very soon, we're going to have a free trial for our membership. And our membership is basically a community and a curriculum. And so, you know, what we did was define goalposts and a pathway for people to develop prodigious skills with horses. Not dressage, not Western riding, but good, solid horsemanship, and to understand it from the horse's point of view. And we call it the Savvy Club, because what we try to teach people is savvy. And it doesn't matter what level you are, what discipline, the horse cares about how you communicate with them. And that's what we teach people to do. And it's pretty much like a college course. And, you know, you mentioned earlier that people can get stuck in kind of level 1 jail or level 1, 2. I think if most people do level 1 and 2, if they don't have very high goals, it's going to change their life with horses. If you have high goals, going to 3, 4, learning that level of savvy, and then beyond is where you want to go. But, you know, our specialty is teaching people how to understand horses from the inside out, and to really have common sense and everyday savvy and good horsemanship skills. You know, when I met Pat at that clinic in 1989, he said to me, "Look, I know you're passionate about dressage." He said, "But dressage is very sophisticated and very refined horsemanship." And he said, "And you have nothing to refine." So,
Woo.
like, no, he's right. He said, "Your horse doesn't understand you. He's terrified. You don't know what you're doing." He said, "First you have to learn that. And when you learn how to be a horseman," he said, "there's nothing you can't do, because your horse will want to be a part of you." And he said, "Dedicate yourself to learning how to do that. You can do anything." Well, I took it to an extreme. I had to marry the guy and, you know, run around the world for 20, 30 years. And, but, you know, Mark's always in my blood. But, you know, there's lots of ways to go. And, you know, the community of people who think this way is so valuable. I know what I went through when I was different from the people at my barn, and it's horrible. And thank goodness for people like you and, you know, everybody that's involved in this kind of natural horsemanship, and, you know, the great horsemanship that Ray and Tom brought to us, and all the masters around the world who think this way but sometimes can't even talk this way. An important community, and that's how we change the world.
This is true. This is very true. Absolutely. It's the community.
And horses and the people who love them.
I love it. That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Linda, for joining me for this. This has been an absolute blast. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Well, I very much enjoyed your questions. It was a great interview. You made my head think a lot.
Good. And
I wish you well in everything you're doing. You're helping to change the world too. And thank you for having me on your program.
Oh, you bet. Thank you so much. Let me do a closing here. Hang out with me for a few minutes and we'll chat for a minute after. All right. Perfect. Well, gang, I want to thank you so much for tuning in for episode number 48 of Talking About Horses. I really appreciate you giving Linda and I your ear for this time. Please remember that if you've missed any of it, you can access the full broadcast through Facebook, YouTube, eventually from iTunes, or by streaming directly from my website by accessing the Talking About Horses page from the Education drop-down menu. Through whatever platform you're listening, please be sure to give us a rating, a comment, a review, and maybe a share with your friends. Thanks so much, gang, and be sure to tune in next time.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Talking About Horses with Patrick King. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave a review and subscribe. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit pkhorsemanship.com. We'll catch you next time.